There aren't a lot of things that would get me out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. But the Clinton County Airport is one of them, and that's the scene of our program today for our little corner. And the manager, Ralph Hensel, how you doing?
Doing very well. Thank you, Gordy.
You know, it's a pleasure for us to be here this morning because I've flown out of this airport. I just told Ralph we had the best flight we ever had to Myrtle Beach this year out of this airport. And this is a resource that I don't think a lot of people are familiar with, that is in terms of how it operates. So you are going to get a chance to tell your whole story today. Okay. You and I have known each other for a long time. How long have you been here at the airport?
11 years. Yes.
Oh, man.
I retired from the Air Force 1987.
That, to me, is hard to believe. But the older I get, the faster time seems to go.
I have that problem as well.
Oh, boy. Well, let's go back to the beginning. Where do you hail from? And tell me a little bit about your Air Force career, Ralph.
Well, I was raised in the Massachusetts area. I've been coming up to Saranac Lake all my life, since I was 1 year old at least, so I'm very familiar with the Adirondacks. I spent 20 years in the Air Force. I flew a number of different airplanes, T-29s, C-47s of all things, flare ships in Vietnam, and more recently the KC-135, and then I was the Transportation Squadron Commander at Plattsburgh Air Force Base for 4 years.
And we have mentioned on this program, as we'll continue, I guess, as long as we have breath to do it, how sad it was when this base folded down after your connection with it and my connection for so many years.
Yes, it definitely was.
Oh, boy. Is that a non-political statement or what? All right, moving right along. How did you get the job here at the Clinton County Airport?
That's a very good question. I've been wondering that for 11 years now. Well, the job was open. They interviewed a number of candidates. I was one of them, and I was selected. That's really what it boiled down to.
It's kind of a neat place, isn't it?
Yes, I've enjoyed it. So we've done what we can to improve things, and I'm about to talk about that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about it. You have a picture here that maybe we can hold up for the camera, and that's very, very interesting. Explain that to me. Whoops, I dropped your paper here. Let me pick this up. All right, explain what we got there.
Okay, basically this is an aerial photo of the airport. We have two 5,000-foot runways at the Clinton County Airport. This runway here is runway 119. Runway 1 is our instrument runway. We have a precision approach, an ILS standing for Instrument Landing System type approach. The other runway, 1432, is 5,000 feet by 100 feet, and that's our VFR runway. That is the runway that may be used during fairly good weather conditions. This area to the north has our terminal, our ramp area. That's the area that the passengers most commonly see when arriving at the airport. It's the area that we have a project ongoing with at the moment to improve the appearance. Basically, we are an all-weather airport. Our claim to fame is that we are home plate to Commute Air. Commute Air has the U.S. Airways franchise. They employ approximately 350 people. They have 30-some Beech 1900 D model aircraft, and they are the only airline based in New York State. So we're rather proud.
Something a lot of people may not be aware of.
I'm certain many people are not aware of that, but that is the case, and so we're very proud of that. Because we are home plate to the airline, a winter operation, snow removal, becomes a bit tricky, and we basically have to keep the airport open virtually at all times, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. During storms, because we are where the maintenance is done on those aircraft. If we close, it's a fairly substantial economic impact on Commute Air.
How was it this winter compared to other years?
The ice storm, of course, was...
yeah. I knew we'd get to the ice storm.
The ice storm was difficult for many people. The dairy farmers, of course, in our local area took the brunt of that blow, and everybody was impacted to one degree or another. But I can tell you it's not a great deal of fun trying to keep an airport open during an ice storm either. We did succeed in doing that for the most part during the storm by putting urea down on the runways and then scraping with plows. You cannot use salt, by the way, on airports. That's true everywhere in the United States. Salt attacks aluminum. So what we use is urea.
That makes real good sense why you wouldn't
That's
want to
right.
use it at an airport.
That's right. It's best not to have the wings fall off the airplane,
that's
and
true.
so we don't do that. So we use urea. In our case, we use brilled urea, and we spread that on the runway, and it works in a fashion similar to salt, but doesn't do the damage to the metal. So that's what we use. Of course, we also use some sand. In any event, we have these two runways. We have two non-precision instrument approaches, two precision instrument approaches. We have airfield lighting, and we're a certificated Part 139 airport. That means absolutely nothing
Not
to
to
most
me,
people,
it doesn't.
but it does mean the FAA inspects the airport annually, and we have to comply with all of the safety requirements imposed on commercial service airports.
You know, I came here, as you may know, to help to build the base in 1955 and then moved here in 1961. And I've seen quite a few changes here at the Clinton County Airport since then. Give us a little bit about the history of the planes. Well, I can remember Mohawk Airlines, and who else was in here? Allegheny? No.
Well, hopefully some of the changes have been for the better.
Yes, they have been.
Let's start with that.
I love it.
I can't go back to the early history. I do believe Mohawk did come in here. I can go back to the 80s, however, when Clinton Aero first started. And there was a federal program at that time called the Essential Air Service Program. And basically the federal government subsidized smaller airlines if they would serve small city types. And with that subsidy, it made it economically feasible for some of these smaller airlines to get going. And that was the start of Clinton Aero. Clinton Aero subsequently was purchased by a glass company, Brockway. And Brockway formed an aviation division. And the aviation division, strangely enough, was the most lucrative division in the glass company. The glass company was later purchased by Libby Owens Ford, another glass company, but that second glass company did not want the aviation division, so they sold it off. That's where Metro Airlines entered the picture. That was a Dallas-based commuter. And they formed a northeastern division with this newly acquired Brockway Air. And they became known as Metro Airlines Northeast. And they operated here for some length of time. They had a problem with their franchise agreement. They ended up with Trans World Airlines, or Trans World Express, the commuter version, which does not have a lot of service connections in the Northeast. In any event, they had troubles, and they ended up in a state of bankruptcy. At the same time that was going on, we had another, the group that had managed Brockway, and actually earlier Clinton Aero, broke away when Metro bought Brockway and became Metro Airlines Northeast. And that group, those three principals, formed a new airline, which is today Commute Air. And they obtained the U.S. Air franchise, and today we have the U.S. Airways Express flag flying out of this airport.
And it seems to work well.
Yes. So, you know, we have in the Plattsburgh area, you have all these buyouts and so on with the airline industry on a national scale with the big guys or the big airlines. We have a small version of all of that occurring right in our own backyard, which is sort of interesting.
There was some focus on this airport when BRAC was considering base closures, as you and I remember very well. And there was some question about flight paths and things. I don't remember what that was all about. Do you?
Yes, I have some. There was a lot of smoke thrown up, trying, some of that created by other groups trying to preserve their own bases, and so there was some distortion of the truth. There were originally 3 runways at this airport. One of the runways, the east-west runway, 1028, conflicted with the ILS final approach course to the air base's runway 17. And so that runway was closed, I'm going to say 15 years ago, and has not reopened. and it was closed because of that traffic conflict. But once that was closed, I don't know of a traffic conflict. We flew for many years with the commuters overflying the center of the Air Force Base runway without incident. And of course, it was positive control. The tower was talking to the airliners as they crossed over, and it was very safe. It's as safe as any airport operation that I know of.
Boy, oh boy, it's a lot of fond memories and a lot of sad memories of that time period, though.
Yes. Well, Plattsburgh Air Force Base was a great Air Force base. The facilities were very well maintained. Probably they were the best maintained of any facility in the Northeast. Of course, it was designed to combat the Cold War. And although people don't like to remember this, we won the Cold War.
Oh, yes. But I'll tell you, those memories, Plattsburgh Air Force Base, are firm in both of our minds. Do you have any feelings about what you'd like to see that runway used for? You know, among all the people around here, you know what the potential is out there. You've been there. You've done that.
Well, the facility would make an excellent airport, but an airport cannot survive without being in balance with its community, or at least that is my opinion. If the aviation side is oversized for the community size, the airport will be in trouble. And Montreal is a perfect example of that, where we have one airport sitting virtually idle, and has been so for many years, because they have too much facility for the city size. If the airport is too small, then pressures are brought to bear to increase the size of the airport and enlarge things, and it will again come up to be in balance with the city size. The problem with Plattsburgh Air Force Base is the facility is so huge, so large for our population density that we can't support it as an airport. That's the problem. I wish that was not the case, but that is so. So for that to work as an aviation facility, they would have to create their own demand, either some aviation industry or something of that nature, and that is very difficult to do in the Northeast, where we have to heat hangars, and we have to plow snow, and we have to de-ice aircraft and things of that nature. And in the southern tier, they don't have to do that, and that's what we're competing with in the airplane world. So personally, I don't see that working. I would like to be wrong on that, but I don't see it working. Other options, we all have ideas. I don't know that any are any better than others. One idea that I've always thought of was a racetrack of some nature. The downside there is the noise. However, it's predictable. It would be summertime only. It would bring possibly a lot of money into the area and support the other industries. That might be something that could be done. I don't know.
In the meantime, we've got a big air show coming out there this summer, which could be interesting.
That's right. As I understand it, the Thunderbirds will be here performing. So that will be good to see again.
All right. We're going to have a tour of this airport and find out a lot more about the Clinton County Airport with Ralph Hensel right after this. Yeah, we're inside the truck here, Ralph. Where are we?
Okay, we're right at the Fixed Base Operator Upstate Air Center. They're basically the gas station of the airport. They service aircraft, transit aircraft that come in. They sell jet fuel. They sell avgas, 100 low lead. They service the oxygen systems on board the airplane. They de-ice aircraft. They tie aircraft down, things of that nature. So they're sort of an all-purpose operator at the airport, but certainly help the airport in its job of meeting the customer's needs. Out here to the right is one of our cargo carriers that comes in every morning from Syracuse. It's carrying the United Parcel Service cargo. That aircraft, along with two Federal Express aircraft, come in every morning, and they're serving the overnight air transportation cargo needs of our community. When I say our community, that's as far away as Lake Placid and Saranac Lake. All of that overnight air cargo is coming through the Clinton County Airport.
That's been that way for years. We've been doing that here for a long time.
That's correct. And off our nose here is one of the helicopters. I believe that's a NYSEG helicopter there that monitors the power lines. And with the ice storm damage,
We had a lot of those, didn't we?
they've been doing a lot of power line observation.
What's this aircraft here? That's an amazing old aircraft.
Yes, that is carrying U.S. Postal Service cargo between here and Massachusetts. Again, overnight air cargo. That particular airplane, it's a Shorts. It's not exactly one of the most beautiful airplanes ever to grace the skies. However, that particular aircraft some years ago was serving this airport as a passenger carrier.
Come on.
That's right.
I love
the
it.
very same tail number.
I'm very glad I asked that. As we drive by on the Turnpike extension, we see a couple of really old aircraft that somebody has built up here, and they're really incredible.
Yes, those are restored DC-3s, basically, and the owners of Commute Air Incorporated own those airplanes and have restored them. Yep. The first Douglas airplane came out in 1937, the DC-1, and within a few years the model type had progressed through the DC-2 to the DC-3. I believe something in the neighborhood of 12,000 DC-3s were built in their heyday. They were one of the three major pieces of equipment that led directly to our success in Europe during World War II.
Have you ever flown them?
It just so happens I flew DC-3s, strangely enough. In Vietnam, I flew flare ships, 750 combat hours in DC-3s.
Did you really? So that was kind of a, I don't know if that was a love affair or a love-hate affair.
Well, the airplane was born before I was. I wish to point that out. And but you know, you will never find a pilot that down-talks his airplane, no matter how old the airplane is. Pilots typically always love their airplane. There was some psychological thing there. I'm not quite certain what it is.
Well, I'll tell you what, they bring back great memories for me, because having been brought up during the Second World War, aircraft and I talk about a love affair. I used to draw pictures, and that's all I would draw pictures of.
I see.
And I lived in the New York City area and saw the stockpiles of World War II aircraft, you know.
Certainly.
What an amazing memory.
We are approaching Commute Air. We're from the back side, which is not its the prettiest side, but we'll swing around here and let you see what their facilities look like. Again, we're very proud of that fact that they are the only airline based in New York State. They fly the Beech 1900D model. That's an offshoot of the original Beech 1900. It has 19 passenger seats, and it has a stand-up cabin. That's the advantage of the D model over the earlier C models. And the Commute Air has approximately 30 of those aircraft. If you like, we can get out and walk through the hangar a little bit and see what they have.
That would be terrific. We'll do it in just a moment. Oh, yeah. Boy, we're going to get a close-up and personal view of this DC-3 that's owned by somebody in Vermont, but in a kind of an amazing restoration of bones here. And you can see as we get close that this was built in Long Beach, California. Wow. 1943, Ralph.
Yes.
Yeah, long time ago, but they did a pretty good job on it, didn't they?
It seems to have withstood the test of time.
And when's the last time you flew one?
A DC-3?
Yeah.
About 1970.
Whoa.
That dates me, I realize.
I bet you'd twitch a little bit if you got in there and tried to do
Right.
it again.
I'm not sure I could get the engine started at the moment.
Do you fly it all yourself now?
Light airplanes, that's about it.
Yeah.
I can't afford to fly the larger aircraft.
But
So-
you told me you spent 750 hours in one of these babies.
Oh, yes.
So you know what they're made of inside and out.
Yeah, to some extent, that's right. Yep.
How many different kinds of planes have you flown in your career?
Let's see, I flew a T-37, a T-38, a C-47, the equivalent of a Convair 240, and then the KC-135.
Oh, they're beautiful. I spent a lot of time in those things and junkets here and there and watching refueling. It's an amazing experience for a layman such as me. But it's an amazing aircraft considering its contribution to this country.
That's right, and the airplane is still flying.
Oh, it's still flying very well, yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about this. Now, you...
They have the inside taken out. They're obviously doing work on it, but you can see what the airplane was like. This was, I'm sure this was a C-47. Yeah, it is. The DC-3 and the C-47 are very similar, but the door is on different sides.
It takes a lot of man hours to do this kind of restoration, doesn't it?
Oh, very, very labor intensive. Yeah.
You have to, when you do something like this, you have to replace a lot of things, don't you?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the DC-3 was the first airplane constructed where the fuselage bore some of the stresses or was responsible for the strength of the aircraft, and it was also the first airliner built that made money for the airlines.
Was it really?
That's right.
An interesting
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah, and the flight control surfaces, that is the rudder and the elevator and the ailerons, are all fabric, where the rest of the airplane is aluminum.
Know that unless you told me.
No, but if you look at them, they are fabric.
I imagine that would be one of the first things to be replaced.
Yeah, that requires a replacement periodically. Yeah, let me.
All right, let's do that. And then there's the paint job. Wow, I don't know how much paint it would take to do it, but the markings of this plane are absolutely beautiful, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They don't make, this is a so-called tail dragger. It has a tail wheel, and when you touch down, normally you touch down on the main gear, and then the pilot lowers the tail down to the runway. You can three-point land it, but it's not recommended. The main gear can withstand a lot more stress than the tail gear can. Therefore, normally it's a main gear landing. One of the idiosyncrasies of the airplane, it has these great big balloon tires, as you can clearly see, and big oleo struts, and if you land with a firm touchdown, everything sort of compresses and then everything sort of expands again, and you go bouncing back up in the air. You can sort of dribble this airplane down the runway, which is exciting if you're on board.
For you, not for me. I'll watch you do it.
Having done that, and not intentionally in all cases, so that's one of the interesting things. In Vietnam, it was a workhorse, as it always has been a workhorse. Because of the big balloon tires, low pressure tires, this airplane could get in and out of dirt fields during times in World War II, and again in Korea, and again in Vietnam. And so things could be done with this airplane that could not be done with more modern airplanes.
In a relatively short takeoff space, right?
That's right. It was a fairly slow airplane. As I recall, everything was 90 knots. Single engine climb speed was 90 knots. Minimum control speed was 90 knots. Final approach was 90 knots. Everything was 90. If you couldn't remember anything else, 90 knots was the speed to remember with this airplane.
I can't remember whether these were Rolls-Royce engines or who made the engines in these things.
No, I believe they were Pratt & Whitney engines, Hamilton standard propellers. But, you know, they made so many of them, there were different propellers put on the airplanes for different applications. But I think generally the aircraft engines were always Pratt & Whitney.
And I imagine you found out just how strong the structure of these aircraft were and the conditions you flew in, too.
Well,
Some of them.
we took hits on, as I recall, from small arms fire on 3 separate occasions, and during one occasion, a small arms round came up through the bottom of the fuselage, and it penetrated the wooden seat that the navigator used to sit on, that was made out of hardwood, strangely enough, and it had split the seat. Now the navigator, just before that happened, had gotten out of the seat and come up between the co-pilot and myself, and was with his chart looking out the windows. when this round came up and destroyed the seat he had just been sitting in. He was worthless for the rest of the flight.
Oh boy, oh boy. Those are experiences that only have humor in retrospect,
Right.
Ralph, you know?
Right. Well, we survived, so I guess it turned out okay.
Yeah, it's amazing when you look at where we've been. But this airport has a rich history in the North Country, and it's survived. It's been surrounded with some controversy from time to time, and but the biggest reason for us showing up here today is to find out just what it's all about. Because a lot of people, first of all, a lot of people don't fly ever.
Yes.
And even for the people who do, they see a very tiny part of the operation, right?
That's right. Well, in today's world, it is very important for our citizens to be linked via a transportation mode with the rest of the world, and the county airport serves that need. Commute Air has flights to Washington, D.C., to Pennsylvania, to Newark, to New York City, Albany, Boston, to Maine. So it's easy. If you live here, you have direct connections to many other areas where you can get on jets and go anywhere.
You know, this is convenience that would be difficult for people who live a long ways away from an airport to understand. I told you how convenient it is for me to live about a mile and a tenth as the crow flies from this airport.
Yes.
To head for a vacation and spend 2 minutes on the road, leave the car here, get on a plane to be at your destination in the sunny south in a few hours, and come back here and not have to drive an hour and a half. Yes. After you land to get home. It's wonderful.
And we don't charge for parking, Gordy. I know that. And it's also difficult to get on the wrong airplane here at the Clinton County Airport.
That's absolutely true, too.
Although we've done it.
We've got another old aircraft down there. What did you say that one was?
That's a World War II bomber. I believe it's a B-26, I think.
I think it is, too, just based on my own memory, never having been in one, but seen them up close. Boy, that's an incredible. Who owns that one?
That's owned by somebody from Maine, and it's part of a museum that he's trying, an aviation museum that he's trying to create over in Maine.
You must have flown it here.
It flew in.
Oh, man. There's nothing quite like the sound of prop aircraft, you know it?
That's right. They are different. Yep.
Having lived through that era in the 1940s, those sounds become very, very familiar, especially living in the New York City area.
Yes.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about what goes on here on a regular basis, Ralph.
Okay, we'll go into the hangar here and just do a quick walkthrough of Commute Air and some of the administrative offices and things of that nature. The aircraft all the maintenance is done here in Plattsburgh on these aircraft. So Saturday nights they're quite busy. We'll walk over here and find some typical Commute Air pilots.
Not as big as the black hangar on Plattsburgh Air Force Base, but it's big enough for the needs, right?
It's also somewhat easier to heat in the winter.
Been to a few functions at that facility, too. I'm sure you have as well.
That's right. Here we have some typical Commute Air pilots. We're doing a little story on the airport, basically. Yeah, and what it's like to have an airline based here, and the employment picture, and how many people are employed here in Plattsburgh.
Great. Gordy Little, how are you?
Oh, Gordy. Dale Holderman.
Dale, who are you?
Chris Reset.
Hey, glad to meet you. You guys from around here?
I've been here since 1975. I came up with the Air Force.
Didn't everybody? I thought everybody. Where were you originally from?
Down in Westchester County, down by New York City, about 40 miles north of the city.
I lived in Thornwood in Westchester County for a while, not far from Pleasantville.
Oh, that's close. Yeah, I was in Peekskill. That's where I was born. And I came up here in 1975 with the Air Force, and then I went to college out in Prescott, Arizona for a while, and then came back here. And I've been here since way before all this started.
The North Country kind of sucks you back, doesn't it? There's something about it. I know how many people do I know who came here with the Air Force and ended up coming back and retiring here, or getting another job and moving their family here?
Lots and lots. Lots and lots.
Quite a few. Ralph and I talked a great deal about former Plattsburgh Air Force Base and how it broke our hearts when it had to close.
I think that was a political decision more than anything else.
Very painful for me, but I bet you very much so to you. Spent a lot of time here. Huh?
Very much so. Very much so. There's a lot of people that are moving out of the area because it closed, and but there's opportunities there. If we can get the right people over there on the base, I think there's a lot of opportunities.
We were just talking about that. We're ready to see some of those. Where are you from?
I'm from Saranac.
Oh, well, listen. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. You were born and brought up in Saranac?
Yep.
Went to Saranac High School. What year did you graduate?
1977.
Oh, you probably knew some of the little kids and the Baker kids related to me back in the 1970s in Saranac. I spent a lot of time at sports venues up there watching football games and baseball games and track meets and wrestling matches.
I'm sure it's a small town. I probably know half the people you know up there.
Yeah. What do you think of that new school? Have you been up there lately?
Actually, I have been. It's very impressive. And we play basketball there on Saturday evenings occasionally. And
Do you?
Yeah.
In the new gym?
No, unfortunately, they don't let us in the new gym. But
Boy, can I remember the days back in the 60s and 70s when I forgot what the capacity of that gym used to be, but there was always about 200 more people trying to get in, boy.
Yeah. Well,
those were the days, huh?
well, unfortunately, I was a wrestler, so it really wasn't all that pleasant of an experience for me to watch them pack them in for the basketball team.
Oh, that's amazing. My son Gordy wrestled in his senior year up there and really enjoyed that time and went on to the Empire State Games, and that was an experience. He came up to visit me a couple of weeks ago, and we were remembering those times. I remember fondly. My wife doesn't because she'd sit in the stands, and when you got a kid who wrestles, you know, you want to grab the nearest thing and help him out. The nearest thing happened to be my wife's knee, and she wasn't very happy. She said, "Would you let me go? You're trying to twist my knee off here." That's a great sport.
Yes, it is. And a nice combination of individual and team.
Yeah, well, how'd you get involved in flying airplanes?
Oh, it was stress relief for a job I had at the time. And
Stress relief?
yes.
I want to hear about that.
Some people rock climb and some people scuba dive. I started flying airplanes and realized this is what I wanted to do. So did a career change and started flying full-time about 5 years ago.
Did you really? And you obviously like it or you wouldn't be standing here.
I love doing it.
It's a great organization. I'll tell you, it's been a lot of fun. I've only met some of the pilots, and as much as I sit in the back and say, hey, that was a nice ride to Washington or Burlington or Boston or wherever.
Well, it's funny that you happen to run into two people who are sort of from the area because the majority of people are not.
Yeah.
But so
It's nice when you can get a job near your hometown, huh?
yes, it is. It's a wonderful thing.
It must be, do you live in Saranac now? Or?
I live in Katyville now, so it's
Close enough.
close enough. I still live in the area, shall we say?
Oh yeah, and it's a beautiful spot. I write about it and talk about it, and people say, why would, people from outside this area, maybe down in Westchester County, might say, what the heck are you doing up in Plattsburgh, New York? I say, come on up, spend 2 weeks with me, let me show you around, and then tell me. Then ask that same question.
Mm-hmm. Well, as long as you like what it has to offer, it's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, we do, Calvin and me. I guess we're going to stick around for a while. Thanks, guys. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you were good at it. Have a great day.
Okay, we'll see you later.
See you later.
Think here in a minute. So.
Oh, I can see a propeller turning. It must be we're ready to fire it up. Those same guys we were just talking with. I wondered why they were itchy. They had to go to work.
They have a schedule to meet. That's right. the public frowns on airplanes that are late.
Now, tell me a little bit about the power, how these airplanes are powered, these particular planes.
Yeah, these have two Pratt & Whitney turboprop engines. The power to weight ratio on these airplanes is excellent. By that I mean, should an engine failure occur during takeoff roll, the airplane can continue the takeoff, climb out on one engine, and have about a 600 foot per minute rate of climb.
Ah. I had no idea.
And that's at the
I never have to find out, but that's wonderful.
and that's at the takeoff rated thrust setting. Actually, there's 40% more power available on that remaining engine if they want to so-called firewall the throttle. It's just that it reduces engine life if they do that.
Those are important considerations for people to fly in these aircraft. I've always enjoyed it. I love the flight over to Burlington. I'm one of those gawkers who want to see what's changed since the last time. And when I got to look at some of the ice storm damage from the air, it almost made me weep.
Yes, you can see he was anxious to get out of here because he's starting the #1 engine on the while taxiing there. I think he did. I think he wanted to get away from this camera.
He thought we were going to stick the microphone in there and try to get him while he took off, but it was very interesting to meet those guys. And yeah, just to let people know what kind of aircraft fly, and that power to weight ratio is an important one.
It's a pilot's airplane. The propellers are switch pitch, so that you have almost as much power in reverse thrust as you do for takeoff. So you can stop the airplane on a dime. So icy runways and things of that nature, which we have to contend with in the winter for the Beech 1900, are typically not a problem.
Yeah, and you know, they're once in a while you get a little rough conditions between here and Burlington. It was a little bit choppy when we came back from Myrtle Beach this year, but you always feel I always feel very, very confident in this aircraft.
Yes, it's a good airplane.
This is the spectacular view from here is almost worth the whole deal. You know, we were talking about why people live here just now with these two pilots and why people stay in the North Country. Just take a look on a day like today.
It is breathtaking.
Absolutely amazing. We've got it. What is this? A training aircraft down there? That yellow one?
No, actually, that is a crop duster. This is springtime. The apple blossoms are out, and what that airplane is used for is spraying the orchards. And it just happens to be parked here at the moment, but it has been.
It was built for that reason?
Oh yes, yes. That's its purpose. Yeah, and that the cockpit is all protected. Orchard spraying or aerial spraying is a somewhat hazardous occupation because the airplane is put right down in the rows of the trees, and so it's very close to power lines and things of that nature. So the cockpit itself is compartmentalized and is built so it will not collapse upon impact and things of that nature. So it's designed with safety in mind, although it's a somewhat hazardous occupation.
Yeah, they do spraying, I think, for black flies and mosquitoes too. I don't know if they'd use that kind of an aircraft for that, would they?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Mostly that's an agricultural sprayer. Yeah. We can get back in the truck and go look at some other things here if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do that.
But these
Hopefully we're not on an active runway here, Ralph, right?
No, we're on a taxi lane right now.
Okay.
Or I wouldn't be going down
We're
here.
talking about towered airports and non-towered. Explain what that is and what this is.
Okay, I will attempt to do that. Basically, I make an analogy that a towered facility and a non-towered facility are very similar to controlled intersections with traffic lights and non-controlled intersections in rural areas. If you have a traffic frequency or congestion to a certain point, you have to put in control devices like traffic lights to keep everything safe. But in the more rural intersections where you don't have the congestion and the number of cars passing through the intersection, it is not necessary to have a control, a traffic control, a traffic light. That's pretty much the same with towered versus non-towered airports. Our airport does not have enough traffic to justify a control tower. So we use a unicom. It's a single frequency. In our case, 122.7 megahertz is the frequency, which is a VHF frequency, and all of the aircraft monitor that frequency and advise what they are doing. And so the pilots basically control themselves in the VFR pattern. When they're taxiing, they're monitoring it, and they say we'll hold short of a runway until another aircraft lands, and then that aircraft lands, they announce that, and you can hear this in the background going on. So in the winter, my trucks, my snow plows are radio equipped, and they're talking to the aircraft in the same fashion. So
Burlington has a tower.
Burlington has a tower, that's correct.
And how did you coordinate with the air base when they were in full function?
Well, the airbase had a control tower, and when our aircraft passed over or through their airspace, they had to be in contact with that tower and obtain clearance to pass through their airspace. That's how it worked.
And you use that airspace now more than you did before, now that the base has been closed, right?
Well, we still we pass through it. We don't have to talk to anybody anymore. We just talk to ourselves, and
It seems very strange to fly over it, look down on it, based on the history. You know?
it certainly does. It's a lot of concrete out there.
Do you have hopes to? Now you say
A commuter is coming in from the left here, about to touch down on our runway 32.
All right, let's get a view of that. Let's hope it's smooth, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what a beautiful landing! Look at that.
That's right.
None of that bouncing you were talking about.
No, it must be one of our North Country pilots.
Now, how much of that is under his direct control, and how much of that is computerized?
The pilot always lands the airplane.
Lands?
Yeah. Yeah. That's true of all the airplanes. We have the hardware, the equipment that can fly a hands-off instrument approach and could make a touchdown, but it can't account for the last-minute problems that can occur, such as a cow being on the middle of the runway and things of that nature. So all landings are made by the pilot, even in the big airplanes, and takeoff same way. And most pilots, although we have systems so the airplane can fly a hands-off instrument landing system approach, or an automatic approach, most pilots hand fly the airplane because they don't like to grab the controls right in the just prior to the flare and try to land the airplane. They want to have the feel of the airplane. So most pilots fly the airplane on the instrument approach.
Are there any guys left that you flew with in Vietnam that are still flying commercial aircraft? Do you know?
Oh yes. I can think of one, Dale Wolf, who's a retired
and a good friend who lives right up the road from me.
Retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, an FB-111 pilot, and he's flying as a captain for Commute Air.
He's just one of those fine human beings that it's nice to know. I've known him for a long, long time. We brought another one in safely.
That's correct. That's how we like to do things.
You know, unfortunately, the media focuses on the negative things that happen with aircraft, but they don't always stop to say how many millions and millions of safe miles are flown every year, every day, to the point where I guess most of us just plain take it for granted, don't we?
That's frequently the case. Flying in an airplane is certainly safer than driving your car to work. Although we don't think that, but that's the truth statistically. Aviation is generally safe. Like anything, we have our problems and things happen, but certainly flying is a safe way to travel.
I've often wondered if I could live long enough to see the orbital or suborbital travel in aircraft for John Q. Citizen. Wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be something, all right. I'm not sure I want to see it, but
well, for somebody that's old enough to have watched the whole space age develop, and I'm one of the ones that still gets excited every time the shuttle takes off.
Well, it's rather impressive. This facility out the right-hand side is called a VORTAX. That's an acronym standing for Variable Omni Range Tactical Air Navigation.
Okay. I'll believe you, Ralph.
Right. That basically is like the hub of a bicycle wheel. It sends out a signal, and when you set the correct frequency in the aircraft radio, the navigation radio, that tells the pilot what spoke he's on. We call them radials. So if you were on the 360 degree radial, you'd be due north of that transmitting antenna. In addition, it sends out the distance from the antenna. So it might say that you're on the 360 degrees at 20 nautical miles. And of course, the pilot knows where the antenna is because that's located on his aeronautical chart. If he knows where the antenna is and he knows where he is relative to the antenna, he's no longer lost. And that's generally good for the pilot.
Okay, now, How big is this airport, let's say, compared to Saranac Lake, Lake Clear?
Their runway is longer. They have a 7,000-foot runway. Their runway was redone for the Winter Olympics, and so
that makes sense.
they can accommodate DC-9s and 727s if necessary over there. We cannot comfortably accommodate that size airplane. We're very comfortable with the commuter, the twin turboprop size aircraft, and we're comfortable with the business jets, the Lear jets and things of that nature, but we are not comfortable with DC-9s and aircraft of that size. The airport, you could land an airplane of that size, but you'd have to make sure the gross weight was low, and you couldn't have any ice on the runways and things of that nature. So realistically, we couldn't have that type of operation.
You know, we were out moving brush around, as people are still doing in the aftermath of the ice storm over the weekend, and I saw a Learjet fly overhead, and I wondered if it had come into the Clinton County Airport, and I swore that I would ask you that question, and you've already answered it.
Yes, it's quite common to have jets come in here.
I wasn't aware that we could accommodate jets. You talk about the runway space and the apron space out at former Plattsburgh Air Force Base. Just about any plane known could land there, I guess.
That's certainly true. I believe 11,700 feet of runway by 300 feet in width. That's
if you didn't get off the ground by then, you were in big trouble.
That's right.
Well, it was an interesting experience for me to be connected with Plattsburgh Air Force Base from the very beginning, from the time the first construction took place in the early 1950s until completion, and then to move back here and maintain that connection through the radio with the air base for all those years. You talk about meeting good friends like Dale Wolf and others whom I've stayed in contact with, and I imagine you stay in contact with some of your old friends too.
Oh yes, that's right. The friendships that were established from that former life of mine certainly will be maintained for many years.
Have you ever thought of writing your memoirs?
No.
You've had a lot of great experiences, Ralph.
They've been experiences, some good, some not so good.
Where are you taking us?
Well, we're going down here to show you the Saranac River. This is where we go fishing, you see, when things get dull at the airport. I want to do a 180-degree turn, come back and show you our approach lighting system. That's what we're trying to do here. This road's a little rough.
Doesn't bother me a bit. I had a small breakfast. There's quite a bit of wilderness right around the airport here. Quite a few trees.
Actually, there's quite a bit of wildlife, and that's typical of airports. We get the snowy owl frequently in the winter when those lemmings are up in Canada die off, and the snowy owl runs out of food. They migrate farther south, and they love airports because of the large open grassy area that they are accustomed to up in the tundra, I guess. So we frequently find them poised on top of a light fixture. This is the Saranac River and is the southern boundary of our airport. Now, as I swing around here, this is the approach lighting system for our runway 1, and the purpose, I'm going to flip these lights up to a high intensity. By the way, because we have no control tower, the airfield lighting is turned on and off by the pilot through his microphone button. If he clicks 3 short succession clicks, it will put the airfield lighting on a low intensity, 5 clicks a medium, and 7 clicks a high intensity. I'm going to bring this lighting system up to the high intensity now, as I just did, and you can see they're a lot brighter. Now, what this lighting system, this approach lighting system does, as the pilot is shooting the precision approach to the decision height, which is 200 feet above the ground level. At decision height, he either has the runway environment in sight or he does not. If he does, he takes over visually and lands the aircraft. If he does not, he executes a missed approach. This approach lighting system helps the pilot find the end of the runway and establish the horizon. That's what those three towers are. That's sort of like a horizon bar, because in clouds, as you make the breakout into visual conditions, it's not always easy to know what is level and what is not, and that helps the pilot. So anyway, that's our approach lighting system, and we have one of those. That's what I'm trying to say.
Is that fairly standard on airports this size?
It is if there's a precision approach. If there's not, it is there is no lighting system typically. And the lighting system is probably worth mentioning. When we get back up to the runway here, I'll talk a little bit about what the different colors mean. As a passenger, if you land at Logan or Kennedy, and you look out the window of your jet aircraft, and it's nighttime, all you see is a sea of lights, and you wonder, how does the pilot know where to go? Yeah. What keeps him from getting lost? Yeah. One of the things that helps, the runways, the border line, the edge lighting of the runway is white. All taxiway lights are blue. The threshold, on the approach end of the runway, has green lights. You can just see it as we come up here, those green lights. That means the runway end is there, and you can touch down at any point beyond that. The green means it's good. On the reverse side of those light fixtures, the lights are red. So if he was taking off from the other end of the runway, he would see red, and that means that's the end of the runway. He best be airborne by the time he gets to the red lights. We have distance remaining markers along the edge of the runway. They're spaced at 1,000-foot intervals. So if you see a 7 or a 6 in a big number as you look out the window during takeoff roll, that would mean that there is 6,000 feet remaining or 5,000 feet remaining to the end of the runway. And that's so the pilot knows where he is along the runway when he's taking off, or for that matter upon landing, how much runway he has left before the end of the runway arrives.
It's very interesting because, like I said before, the layman wouldn't have no idea what those lights are and what they indicate, but they're just like road signs for the guy that's flying it, right?
That's right. They certainly help. The first thing in low visibility conditions, when there's fog around, that the pilot sees as he breaks out of the cloud, he'll see these he'll see the approach lighting system first, and then as he shifts his field of view up, he'll catch the runway lights. He doesn't see the pavement, he sees the lights, and he comes in and bases his flare, his depth perception is based on where those lights are. So that the airfield lighting is extremely important to the pilots, to the safe conduct of the flight.
Do all pilots fly in simulators before they fly regular aircraft, or do most of them get started without doing that?
Well, it's a long, almost like an apprentice program. The lowest or the basic pilot rating is private pilot. Student pilot, then private pilot, and then you go up through various phases, instrument license, commercial rating, and the premier rating is the airline transport rating, which all commercial pilots flying airliners must have. Okay, and there are minimum hours, time requirements for all of those ratings. All the commute air captains have airline transport rating certificates, and they have all flown in simulators. The Beech 1900D model has a simulator. They go through that down in New York City, by the way. To go through the simulator program to become a first officer, that's a co-pilot, in one of the Beech 1900s costs $10,000. Just
wow.
Yeah, so it's a.
You gotta have a commitment.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And to start off in this field, Commute Air would want you to have a bachelor's degree in some discipline, and they would want probably 2,000 hours of flying time. They would want to see that you have successfully passed the simulator training down in New York City. And after you've done all that, they will consider hiring you as the first officer in the airplane. So my point is that the people flying these airplanes are very well trained, and while some of them may appear to be young, They are not without experience.
No, that's absolutely true. It's obvious to those of us who've flown on the aircraft that these people all know exactly what they're doing. And I wonder how many miles a year these planes fly. Does anybody keep track of it? It just adds up tremendously. Talk about frequent flyers.
That's right. Well, each airframe, each aircraft typically will make 25 takeoffs and landings a day.
Come on.
So that tells you.
Am I getting an education here?
So it's pretty intensive work. The airplanes make 2 cycles. They go out on a morning cycle, come in around say 11 o'clock, and then the crew will change and they go out and fly that same cycle again. So the airplanes get used.
Yeah, these airplanes have to be tremendously strong. They have to have backup systems that work in case something else fails. But just to put that many miles in, you imagine the technology that goes into designing an aircraft like that,
Oh, yeah.
especially that beach aircraft. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's very true.
Now we got a plane approaching. What's this all
That'll
about?
be a second Caravan, the second Federal Express aircraft coming in. As we mentioned earlier, they're coming in from Syracuse, bringing the overnight air cargo in.
It's kind of neat to see it coming right at us from this direction. While we're sitting here, and we can see one of the guys over here, he's directing him in.
Yeah,
Fuel,
that's correct. He's marshaling the airplane in. That's correct.
He doesn't have any way of talking with him, right, except with his hands.
Well, that's correct. They have a handheld radio, but he's just acting as a point of reference for the aircraft to center its nose wheel on.
There's the world on time.
That's right.
There's a lot of competition among these guys to deliver the goods, isn't there?
Yes, this overnight air cargo thing has really taken off in the last, I'm going to say 10 to 15 years. Now, if your car, whatever brand it might be, breaks down and you take it to the dealer, they'll probably say, well, you need a certain widget to repair this vehicle. We don't have it in stock, but if you're willing to pay premium freight, we'll have that part in tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and you'll be in your car driving it again by noon. And that's how the world is operating today. Many of the retail operators have greatly reduced their inventories and the money necessary to maintain those inventories, relying rather on overnight air cargo to meet the short time customer requirements.
Now we have another FedEx plane coming in, right?
That's right.
We got 2 in a row here, 2
Wait.
for the price of 1.
We are a regular beehive of activity.
How many commercial flights out of here every day?
About 16.
Starting really early.
Yes, to fly out of this airport, you have to get up with the sun because these commuters are linking up with the hubs: Syracuse, Albany, Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Washington D.C. to join the jet schedules there. Well, if you're coming from a rural area, that necessarily means you have to get going early in the morning if you want to get there that day.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd much rather fly out of Plattsburgh at 6:25 in the morning than have to drive to Montreal and fly out of Montreal at 6 o'clock in the morning. And when I'm going to a destination, I love to fly out early in the morning. It's great.
Yes, it isn't bad at all.
Let's talk a little bit while we have this opportunity here. We're going to sit here for a minute. That's okay.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about what makes this airport tick, how it gets its funding, and how it sustains itself.
Okay. For capital improvement projects, that is projects involving paving runways, taxiways, airfield lighting, improvements to the facility itself, we participate in the Airport Improvement Program, which is a federal program. All commercial service airports that enplane 10,000 or more passengers annually are entitled to a certain amount of federal assistance. Now that federal money, the source of that money is from a ticket tax levied on the consumer when he buys an airline ticket. And that tax goes into a fund, the Aviation Trust Fund, which in turn funds the Airport Improvement Program. We glean about $500,000 a year from that program. And for any of the federally approved projects, which are typically safety, security, and capacity enhancement type projects, the feds participate at the 90% level, New York State at the 5% level, and Clinton County at the 5% level. And then for the Clinton County portion, we have another tax. It's the passenger facility charge program. We have a $3 head tax basically on every passenger passing through our terminal, and that reimburses Clinton County for its 5% participation in these approved projects. So I've probably confused the issue to some degree, but it all boils down to these major projects are not being paid for by the property owner in Clinton County or by the wage earner on the federal level. They're being paid for by the people that are using the system, and I think that's an important point to get across.
I think so, and for the average taxpayer in Clinton County, to be cost effective should be just about down there near the bottom line.
That's right. That's right.
This is a good operation. You've been here yourself for 11 years. What are your dreams for this place? I'm sure there's been some frustrations along the way.
Well, the goal and our purpose is to meet the needs of Clinton County, the air service needs certainly of the county resident, and to keep pace with the county, to keep in balance with our community, to provide employment opportunities, and to support the industrial growth of our area and the needs of the citizenry. That's our purpose. That's our function. I think to date we've accomplished that at a cost that's reasonable.
You know, you alluded to a little controversy over some of these other buildings on the other end of the airport. Tell us what function they serve and what you see down there.
Well, there are 6 old hangars that have been there from basically in the 1940s, and they in 1987 were in a state of disrepair, and many people wanted to see them torn down. Many of the owners did not want to see them torn down. We agreed to require the owners to paint the facilities to improve their appearance, and if they did that, we would give them a 10-year lease on life, which we did. That lease, by the way, is expiring this year. And
yeah, that's why I brought that up.
right, probably what we'll do now is give them 1-year leases, a year at a time. Probably I'll be dead and buried and long gone off the face of the planet, and those hangars will still be there. That would be my guess. But if we need to expand, then the county's in a position where we could require the owners to tear the facilities down. I'm going to have to move the truck here because that airplane's going to taxi out here and be the next thing. I'm just going to go back to the terminal and park.
Just getting a little better view from the apron here on the side of the Clinton County Airport as to the FedEx unloading and offloading and how the fuel system works. Ralph, let's talk a little bit about fuel here. How much storage do you have, and how does this whole thing work?
Well, we have 2 above ground 15,000 gallon fuel tanks. One handles Jet A, the other stores 100 low lead for the reciprocating powered airplanes. The fuel flows by pipeline to the dispenser here and by hose, obviously, into the aircraft.
A little different system than they have out on the former base.
Yes, they had a hydrant.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yes, that system had a large bulk storage area with a couple of million gallons worth of storage, and then underground pipelines to pump houses out between the runway and taxiway, and then a hydrant system and I believe each pump house had 6 50,000 gallon underground fuel tanks, and then those were connected by pipeline to the apron where the large aircraft were parked, and then the fuel flowed through a hose cart up and serviced the aircraft. And I know something about that. I was the fuels officer at Minot Air Force Base for 3 years. So.
That's the first thing I learned when I moved to Plattsburgh, how to pronounce Minot.
Right.
Somebody called up and said, just remember, why not Minot?
That's right. That's right.
But that fuel system on Plattsburgh Air Force Base, John Q. Public learned a lot more about it during the base closure process because that was one of our strong points.
Yes.
I remember Tom Tobin standing up and talking about it.
Yes.
Not that it did us any good ultimately, but it's an amazing system.
Yes, it certainly was.
So what else is happening in the course of today? Will there be quite a few of these FedEx planes coming in, or you just have several in the morning? Or
Several in the morning. That's pretty much it. We have the 2 caravans, and we have the UPS airplane, and then we have the Postal Service airplane, and those are all daily activities.
Now you talk, this organization that flies out of this airport pumps a lot of money into a community. You alluded to that as we were just sitting out there in the apron, but I don't think our viewers around the North Country region just realizes how important that is. You talk about 350 jobs plus all the daily traffic.
Yeah, the average captain with Commute Air is making something over 50,000, by the way. Yeah, so there's just, many own homes here and have families here, and we're supporting many industries, of course, with air cargo. The taxes on things such as the hangars and so on are certainly helping the Beekmantown School District, which we're in.
Think about that. Yeah.
And so it's a very positive thing for our community.
I think it's important to mention those things because, as I said earlier in our broadcast, most of us either drive by and don't use the service or use it infrequently. We just don't know what a great contributor it is until we get down to the nitty-gritty with people like you, Ralph.
Well, that's like I say, I think it's a positive thing for our community. Yeah.
That's great. You going to show us inside?
Yeah, we can go into the terminal if you'd like. About the construction project in a minute.
Yeah, this is, we're getting a view out the door here, Ralph. This is where people would approach if they were going to take a morning flight.
That's correct.
Park, and they're right in the side here. Free parking, as you said before.
That's right. And people wonder about that sometimes. Why don't we charge for parking? Every other airport does. That's typically the reaction. So let me speak to that for just briefly. People will frequently drive from the Plattsburgh area to Albany or to Montreal or to Burlington to get on a jet aircraft. Nobody that I know of in Albany will drive 150 miles north to get on one of our commuters. If we charge for parking here, what will happen is the traveler's spouse or parent or neighbor will drop them off at the airport and then will come pick them up when they arrive. And if I charge for parking, I'll look out and see an empty parking lot. So we won't derive any revenue from it. But if you charge for parking, you then have to man that parking lot 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with an attendant to collect the money. That will cost me more to operate the parking lot than it does to operate the airport. So it's for a small operation like Saranac Lake or Adirondack Airport, like Lake Placid, like Plattsburgh, Messina, Ogdensburg, Malone. Charging for parking does not work well. So that's that side of it. The other side of it is one of the things that we have or that we can offer to our local people is convenience, and by not charging for parking, that makes the airport more convenient. So that's another reason not to do it. They tried it apparently back in the early '60s. There were parking meters out here. Perhaps
I remember very well.
and they didn't work terribly well, so they removed them, and we have stayed with that concept.
That's great. All right, let's talk about inside here. You told us before we went outside about 40 minutes ago in this broadcast how this facility has changed. Let's go into that again in more detail.
Well, the original terminal was 3,000 square feet roughly, and we're standing in it now. And about 1990, we did a project to expand the terminal, and the terminal today is 6,000 square feet, so we doubled the size. We could have made it a better terminal, but it would have cost a lot more money to do so. So what we did was to try to keep the expansion reasonable and affordable. This is our baggage claim area. This door opens and closes, obviously, rather than the big turnstiles and things like that you see at the large airports. We're pretty basic. The wheeled baggage cart is wheeled up to the other side of this door. The door opens, and an individual passes the bags through.
What you see is what you get. You don't have to wait in line for a half an hour to get your suitcases.
That's correct. We are what we are, but it works.
It certainly does. All right, let's just move farther and explain as we go.
We have Hertz and Avis rental car counters here. It's not yet 9 o'clock, so they aren't manned yet. They'll be in shortly, I'm sure. But we do have rental cars like most airports. This is the counter area for the Commute Air or U.S. Airways. U.S. Airways, their name changed. And that's fairly typical. And we have the waiting room down here. And we're approaching the airport cafe, and
I heard you tell somebody order a good breakfast because we're going to take a look at it.
We're going to go in here and seek out the owner of the restaurant and see what her opinion is.
That's great. This is really neat here, and this wasn't always a fixture at the Clinton County Airport, as you remember way back when. Hi, Jody. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
It's nice to see a little sunshine out the window when you come to work in the morning, huh?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about what you have here.
Oh, well, we basically run a regular menu: hamburgers, hot dogs, hot sandwiches, cold sandwiches, a little bit of everything. We run specials every day.
Coffee. I may have to get a cup of coffee before we get out of here. This is very nice. How long have you worked here?
4 years. I've been here for 4 years.
So you know the operation pretty well. You have a few regulars, do you, that come in and
yes.
see every day?
Oh, yes.
What are your hours?
6:30 to 2, daily.
Great. I have to sneak up here for lunch sometime. Julie, thanks.
Jody.
Oh, Jody. Why do I keep saying Julie? I'm all right. I know his name is Ralph and his name is Fred, and thanks a lot.
Thank you.
See you later. Let's get going here. All right. This is the waiting.
Wait to board the flight.
On a good
Yeah.
See what's happening.
Try to keep it cheerful. And this is the security area here for passengers that are boarding an airplane. The baggage is screened here, and the people go through the metal detector here. And then there's a small holding area, so if it's pouring down rain, that we can screen the passengers and just hold them here, and then they run out quickly to the airplane. Yeah. We don't have jetways here. Again, we're very basic. If you have to be able to walk. Well, that's not completely true. We do have handicapped capability for elderly people and things of that nature. But you do have to board the airplane by walking up the entranceway.
I had a first. I can't remember what airport it was in on our way down to Myrtle Beach. Couldn't figure out what was setting off the security system as I walked on through, and it was a stick of gum. Apparently the metal, I don't know what kind of foil it was.
And it set off the metal detector.
Set off the metal detector, and we took the pack of gum out of my pocket, and I was cleared.
I see.
I
Wow.
thought I was going to have to take all my clothes off and check everything out.
Yeah, we wouldn't want that. It might be too entertaining for the public.
Yeah, it certainly would be, in my case especially. Well, we can see what's at least what's flying these days. Everything's right up here. Does somebody have to change those every day, right?
Well, no, that's pretty much the schedule as it's set forth. That's right. Excuse me? We can go out here. I'll show you this project we have going on.
When we arrived here this morning, I noticed that I had to take just a tiny little detour. Ralph, what's this all about?
Well, the contractor keeps telling me that this is a construction project, but to date, all I've seen is destruction.
Okay.
But what we have going on here is a project to improve the entrance to the airport. The entrance has looked poorly for many years, certainly for the 11 years I've been here, and we've known that. We've spent the money, the federal money for federally sponsored projects that I talked about earlier, on the air side. We've reworked the runways, the taxiways, the airfield lighting, the ramps, all of those operational necessities, and we're to a point now where we can afford to spend a little money on what the traveler uses every day and what the general public sees. So that's what we're doing. This is about a $400,000 project, and we're putting in all new curbing at the front of the terminal here. There will be real sidewalks. This pavement all gets reworked. The flagpole area and that traffic circle will now accommodate parking, short-term parking for people that just want to come into the terminal or go into the restaurant. We'll have a real flagpole rather than an antenna mast, which is what we formerly had. And then there will be a divider over in the parking lot area with a raised curb and a divided area. And the part to the south will be daytime parking. The part to the north will be long-term parking. The reason for that is, in the winter, we have a problem plowing our parking lot. People park here for 45, 60 days at a time, and it's very difficult for us to plow the parking lot. So we'll have a physical divider, and then we will have this, like I say, southern part daytime parking only, so at 7 o'clock at night there shouldn't be any cars there. If there are, I can tow them, and then I can get a plow in and do a decent job of plowing at least part of the parking lot. We will continue to have controlled chaos in the remainder of the parking lot in the winter. We'll do the best we can, as we always have, plowing between the cars, but that's a tough job. But there should at least be one area that's pretty good.
How long will this project take, you think?
Should be done by the end of June. There's no good way of doing it without disrupting everybody, because we're doing the whole entrance to the terminal, so we gave the contractor a very short suspense to get the job done.
Things are a lot less disruptive here than they would be in a metropolitan area, and it seems like everywhere you go, these projects are ongoing, so it's a necessary part of it.
It is. You either improve things, which means you have projects, or you do nothing, in which case things fall down around you.
Many people in the area are familiar with Flying Nuns Aviation. Let's explain what goes on over here, Ralph.
Well, Flying Nuns Aviation is our oldest tenant, by the way. That is still surviving tenant, I should say. They've been with the county airport for many years. They do air charter work. They do flight instruction. They have aircraft for rent. Certainly anybody interested in learning how to fly in the local area, they would be an area to contact, because they do give flight instruction, and they have 4 or 5 aircraft that they use in that process, and years of experience.
Yeah, let's talk about how hard it is to learn how to fly one of these small aircraft. How many hours it takes, and what's the licensing procedure?
Yes, well, basically, an individual wanting to become a pilot has to pass a physical exam, and then they have to pass a written test, and they get a student pilot's license. They then go up with an instructor and have a certain number of hours of dual instruction. I would say typically 20 to 25 hours, and then they will be cleared solo. They will get additional flying time and confidence flying the airplane by themselves. They may have a few more instructional rides. They will then get ready for an FAA check ride. They will then pass the private pilot written and have a check ride with an FAA certified check pilot. And at that point, they're a private pilot. That's how it works.
That's about 5 sentences, and it's a lot of hard work, though. I mean, you have to really have a desire, and again, that word commitment to fly, because you want to make sure you do it right.
That's right. You want to make sure that last landing was a good one.
Yeah. That's about how it works. I was just thinking as you were talking, what whether your memory goes back to the very beginning, when were you a young person when you dreamed of being a pilot or flying aircraft, or how did that develop for you way back when?
Well, this may sound a little peculiar, but again, we have this camp on Middle Saranac Lake with boat-only access. I've been operating small boats since I can't remember when. When I was 10 years old, I used to make the 10-mile boat trip from our camp down to the marina on Lower Saranac Lake. I used to haul lumber as we were constructing this. Anyway, messing about in small boats was always a part of my life, and I have to believe the responsibility that was put on my shoulders to do that at a very early age somehow had an impact on my later becoming a pilot, because there are a lot of similarities between operating a boat and flying an aircraft. The captain on the high seas is totally in command of that ship, and the captain of an aircraft is totally in command of that airplane, to include the captain of Air Force One. He is in charge of that airplane while it's in the air. When he gets on the ground, if things didn't go right, he may no longer be employed, but while it's in the air, he is in command. So
you first flew not in the Air Force, was it before?
my first flight was out off on a Colonial skimmer aircraft, which is the forerunner of the Lake amphibian. And I was 10 years old, and this airplane landed out on Middle Saranac Lake, and I zipped out in my little boat and to see if I could help them, and they were looking for a place to camp, and I helped them with that. The next day, they offered me a flight in the airplane. That was my first aircraft ride, or airplane ride.
And then look where you've come from there.
That's right. Yeah.
That's
Kind
great.
of interesting. Yeah.
Well, this has certainly been a wonderful tour here today. We've learned a great deal about the operation. How many more years do you think you'll be putting in here? Have you thought about that?
I have no idea. I'm 53 right now, and retirement seems like it's in the distant future, but great way in the future. So I intend to stay here, I guess is what I'm saying.
There are a lot worse ways to make a living, Ralph.
That's right. Yeah.
You answer immediately to the legislature. How does that work?
Yes, through the county administrator, Bill Bingle, to the county legislature. Yeah.
It doesn't take you long to learn the process, does it?
That's right. That's right.
Standing at the ticket counter, not too much activity right at the moment. Who are you?
My name's Tad Laundry.
Dad, how are you?
Good, sir.
Where are you from?
Rouse's Point.
See, we got a lot of local people working here, huh?
Yes, sir.
How'd you get hooked up with this organization?
I started out with Piedmont back in the late 80s, and then the company was bought out by Metro Air, which was a TW affiliate. And they filed Chapter 11, went out of business, and I came to work here at Commute Air. So, yeah, I've been in the industry for a few years.
So what's a typical day like for you?
Different. Every day is different. That's what I like about doing this. No 2 days are the same. Either work outside in a ramp or
You have to do double duty sometime?
Yep.
Everything works here by computer, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. Reservations. Everything changes. I mean, basically, there's a system, all the pitch work. Everything's tied in. Yeah.
It's always amazing to me how somebody can come in and say, I'd like to change my flight, and how you can come back with a smile on your face and do that for somebody.
Well, that's not a problem. Standing with the camera in front is a little. I'm not normally this nervous.
Believe me, it can be a little bit of pressure when you got 16 people waiting to go somewhere, and you got some changes, or you got a flight that's delayed somewhere. You have to do some serious thinking, don't you?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we do.
Well, I appreciate you talking with us. Good luck.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
You too. Well, you see, when you're the boss's secretary, and a camera is going by, and he says, I'd like to have you meet my secretary. The poor secretary didn't have much choice in the matter this time, did they?
No, that's for sure.
What's your name again?
Terry Beisinger.
Terry, I don't know how you do it. You look like a radio operator. You were talking on the telephone as we walked in. You heard every word we said because you wanted to know when the camera got turned on you.
Well, I don't like to miss a trick.
How long have you been here?
About 14 years.
Holy mackerel, you were here before the boss. When he says you run the show, he's not kidding. Where do you live?
In Jay.
Oh, see, we got so many North Country people. Takes you, what, about 40 minutes to get here in the morning?
About 50 minutes. Yeah.
Minutes. Yeah, she doesn't want to say that she might get here a little bit quicker if she starts late. What is a typical day for you?
It varies. I do a lot of accounting. We have federal and state grants and deal with the public and correspondence, and we deal with the legislative office downtown, and I don't know, always something to do.
Even though he told you to say nice things about him, here's your chance. We're right back here. What kind of a guy is he to work for, really?
He's really a nice man. No, really, he is. He's just a very nice man. He's honest and upfront. If he's mad. So we try to keep him happy.
Have you lived around the North Country all your life? Or
Yes, I have. Yeah.
never had any designs about moving away from here?
Moving? No. I do want to go to Florida, though.
Everybody wants to go to Florida sometime. I don't think I would ever want to live there, but I enjoy going to visit. I have a lot of friends there and a lot of great things to see. And when it gets to be, 10 feet of snow and 40 below, it's nice to get out of town for a little while, once in a while.
Exactly. Especially when you see everybody coming back here with all the tans.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you, it's amazing how many people from this area fly and drive down to Myrtle Beach, for example, during the Easter vacation. Obviously, you didn't get to sneak away.
No, I probably won't for a while. I just had a new baby, so.
Did you? All right. Now, is this the new baby over here? All right, we're going to show this picture. Oh, of course.
Valerie Ann.
Tell me a little bit more about Valerie Ann.
Oh, she's a good girl. She's 3.5 months old now.
And
And she's great.
born where?
In Plattsburgh at CVPH. Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. Is she your only child?
Yes, she is.
Oh, my. And the love of your life, how can you stand to be away from her?
Oh, don't get me started. I can't.
Who takes care of her during the day?
Grandma. Thank God.
Goodness, what would we ever do without Grandma?
I don't know. Now that I'm on TV, I think we should get 5 years leave of absence when we have our babies.
Oh, let's see. Yeah, we'll work. I heard a little chuckle from the other room.
Yeah, this is an ongoing thing here.
You're about as likely to get that as you are in hitting that $17 million lottery, you know.
I probably have more of a chance of doing that.
Yeah, I could hear that going on. Thanks for being a great sport. You're terrific.
Thank you.
And hug that baby, too.
Oh, I will.
A lot. We walked by your little toy tractor there, and boy, the name Farmall rings bells for me in the old farming days.
Yes.
You said you have a real one?
Well, I have a 1950 Cub tractor with a sickle bar on it and a field plow and such as that. Yeah, we live in Peru, so although blue tractors are the tractors you're supposed to own in Peru,
Yeah.
green tractors are north of Plattsburgh. I have a red one.
Did you actually restore it, or was it in pretty good shape when you bought it?
Well, I've done a lot of work to it, but it's in pretty good shape now.
They seem to run forever, don't they?
They do, yes.
Do you have, we didn't mention this before, but do you have any other hobbies?
I have too many hobbies, I think.
Tell me about some of them.
But well, we have a camp in Saranac Lake, of course, and I've I also do a fair amount of black powder shooting, and have done that since I was about 16. So
That's a neat interest.
Yes, that's been ongoing for many years, and of course we have three kids. I say kids. Our eldest is 22 and graduating from Oswego Saturday. and our second daughter is 20, and she's a junior at Oswego. And then we have a 14-year-old, soon-to-be 15-year-old son that's in the junior high at Peru Central. So the three kids keep Mary and myself pretty busy.
It's terrific. I didn't get into this family business, but it's wonderful. As I've said so many thousands of times, there are a lot worse places to live and raise a family. And I know my kids always, the ones that don't live here, always love to come back.
That's right. Well, it's, the two daughters that are both in college now certainly have done very well. And the basis that they obtained here in this community has served them well. And our oldest has been accepted into the Peace Corps and will be going to Africa on the 5th of July.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, for a little over 2 years, I guess.
I wrote a column a few months back about how young people today seem to lack the sense of adventure we had. I may have to take that all back.
Maybe so.
Peace Corps in Africa?
Yes. She will be going to Uganda. And we'll be there for a little bit over 2 years, I understand. I'm still trying to deal with this. But
You gotta let go sometime, Ralph.
I guess that's true. Yep.
Not that it's easy, because we got another granddaughter going to college this fall, and people already know I'm going to be a mess, as I have every time I dropped a kid off at college somewhere.
That's right. It's but they have to jump from the nest and make their own way in this life. So. Hopefully they will all do well.
How did your girls both choose the same school?
Well, that's a very good question. They're quite typical of most siblings. They're different. Anne is an education major and selected Oswego for that course of study. Susan is our theater type, and she was in a couple of the musicals that the Peru Community Theater put on, and sang in church and things of that nature. And she very much wanted a theater program, and Oswego had one of those, and she ended up going to Oswego and is doing very well. She's had the lead female role in a number of musicals they've put on there, and so she will graduate in about a year, and we'll see where she goes. Her stated purpose is to be on Broadway. We will see.
Oh, boy. And some of us wanted to play in the big leagues when we were young, too.
That's right. Like I say, we will see.
But you never know. In this day and age, if she has the talent and the desire, we'll be in line getting tickets one of these days, maybe.
We don't know. We'll see.
Don't know.
That's right.
Ralph, thanks so much for having us here today. We've got a tremendous education about your little airport here. You obviously run a tight ship, and it works well. Good luck with everything you do.
Thank you very much.
And who knows where we're going to go next time for this little television program called Our Little Corner.